Alrighty, welcome back. Going to continue this critical let's play of the first Modern Warfare. So in the last video we saw the kind of opening tutorial missions, went through the kind of base mechanics of the game, and the kind of opening cinematic level where the president of some fictional, stereotypically racist Middle Eastern country gets murdered.
Enemy down.
So now the game with this kind of special forces, what we are, SAS UK squad, we still have the kind of wanting to be a special elite modern warfare kind of idea still happening. You know, being part of an elite squad, not just a soldier on a battlefield idea.
There should be a few more guard posts up ahead. Kamarov and his men will be waiting for us in a...
We've got on the TV the execution of our previous character. It was interesting, us looking at ourselves, looking at that character. And of course you've got this red sight, high-tech thing. At this early stage of the game, it's still very much about, you know, using the kind of modern day technology as opposed to World War II technology. It's still very much kind of this masturbatory glorification of technological warfare, because this isn't a World War II game now. And we'll see that again and again, especially in this game, but also throughout the series. So we're trying to rescue a informer on this level. I can't remember if I said that yet in this video. Whoops. Right. So use your D-pad to select your different kind of gadgets. And put down some stealth claymores, I guess. That didn't go so well. Oh, let's just grenade them. You also see here, before I just ruined it, something this game does over and over well is framing, like knowing where the player is going to be looking from and making sure the player... Actually, you know what, I'm just going to... no, man. Okay, so this game's older than restart from checkpoint kind of options in menus. But so you have a guy in here, you had to claymore, and your characters knew he was there. But because you come up this road like this and you see his shadow on that wall, that's really simple, it's really basic, it's not something no other game has ever done. But these games just constantly do this really nice framing of the environment and framing of what your character's meant to do in the kind of space of a TV as you would probably see it. So if you follow this path up this road, like the game wants you to follow it up, you'll see his shadow just there. And that's kind of another reason I'm doing these videos, is those moment-to-moment usages of the first-person perspective I find really interesting. But a lot of people, I think, just want to run through at their own pace and kind of miss a lot of that, and you get this idea of these games being really contrived. But if, you know, you roleplay for a soldier who's ranked lower than Captain Price or whatever, you kind of do get to actually see these nice framing devices that are constantly done.
Welcome to the new Russia, Captain Price. What's the target, Kamarov? We've got an informant to recover. The M21's on the other side of the hill.
So there's some Russian rebels here that are friends of us. Then there's some ultra-nationalist rebels who I think take over the country, or have taken over the country. I'm not actually sure. Anyway, these are the good Russians and those are the bad Russians, and we're going to go shoot bad Russians to save a good Russian, whose name is Nikolai, because he's Russian.
This way. There's a good spot where your sniper can cover my men.
So now we have some proper old-fashioned battlefield stuff happening, but we're still not really part of the battlefield, we're off to the side.
Enemy contact north.
Since I'm recording this, I'm sure all my shooting will be terrible.
So take out the machine gunners in the window so Kamarov's men can...
So this shooter I have to take out through the wall. So it's, again, the game's reminding me that's a thing I can do later on. Not any war mine, just certain materials like wood or whatever.
Damn! Enemy helicopters! You didn't say there'd be helicopters, Kamarov. I didn't say there wouldn't be any either. I need to protect my men from those helicopter tubes. This way. Make it quick, Kamarov. I want that informant. You have nothing to worry about. We'll take out BM-21s and carve a path straight to...
So we're doing favors for this Russian guy in order for him to help us get our kidnapped friend. So it's kind of an uneasy alliance.
We should just beat it out of him, sir. Not yet. Contacts northwest.
So now we've kind of got the kind of skirmishes that you'll see time and time again through this game over series. You know, slowly moving forward, moving from cover to cover, enemies moving towards you. Oh no. It's always hard to tell how close the grenades are. You think you're far enough away, and then it's still there. And you've got, so you can see me kind of going out of my iron sights and back in again, just to exploit that lock-on auto-aim. But it doesn't feel annoying like auto-aim would in most console shooters. It's like, because it's locking on where I want it to lock on. I think it's a really elegant solution. I'm really surprised more games with iron sights don't copy it. Oh, you're right there. As soon as you start losing health, you just lay down on the ground. So I always find the battles in these games have a really nice rhythm to them. They are very repetitive, they are very... It's the same thing over and over, but it's got a really good feel to it, it's got a really good rhythm. Which is helped by several things. But we're back to another sniper part. Most particularly the fact that enemies never have much health. Never take more than a few bullets to take down. Which is one of the elements, if you watch JW from Vlambeer, his video, The Art of Screenshake, where he talks about how he makes Vlambeer games feel good to play. He talks about, no, they're good guys. He talks about how one of the things he does is just giving enemies lower health, so that you're not just doing the same thing over and over, you're kind of constantly moving on to the next target. And that's something the modern warfares and the old Call of Duties do as well. You're not shooting a cacodemon with 11 shotgun shells, you're just spraying bullets around and slowly taking down a wave of enemies. It's much more arcadey, really. I really appreciate that. It's probably why I can play these games over and over again. It's because that rhythm, that arcadey rhythm of just shooting lots of people, as kind of problematic as it is just easy to kind of surrender yourself to. It just becomes a problem when it gets painted in this kind of, here is a realistic depiction of war, jingoistic kind of stylized way. Like if this game wasn't trying to make, this is what war is really like kind of claims, then it would be far less problematic and I would feel far more okay with how much I enjoy it.
Enough sniping. Where is the informant?
So we're getting pissed off at this guy for not telling us where our informant is. We're not going to help him anymore. We just want our information. So we kind of like shooting the people in their bunks in the early mission. It's again showing our characters are very much self-serving. It's not just benevolent good guys trying to save the world. It's, we have our own objectives, we have our own priorities, and these other guys with their own wars don't really matter to us. So you'll notice too, when I stop talking, that we have some cinematic music happening. The trilogy never does anything particularly out there with music, but it does use it well, I think, if very conventionally. You know, it always pops in at just the right time. Like, gives you a heightened sense of you should be moving fast now, or you should feel urgent now, kind of thing, and it does that really well. Well, I don't have a pistol, that's going to be bad. I tried to pull out my pistol that I did not have. Modern Warfare 3, I think, it does the kind of cinematic movie stuff. Sorry, talking and shooting is hard apparently. Does the music stuff really well.
Bloody hell, let's move. He may still be alive.
So, cars explode.
Guys, go around to the back and cut the power. So, get ready.
People get angry they can't open doors in this game until the other character opens the doors, which is, I don't know, again, it's a criticism I don't understand. It's kind of, well, essentially playing the game wrong. Like, you know, that's not your role. Your role is to follow this character. That's kind of what you have to do to enjoy it. So now the music's gone again while we're kind of back to infiltration in the dark. And again, the kind of glorification of modern war technologies with the night vision goggles. You can see our lasers now, which I guess were always there. We've got the blackness around the side, so your character's actually wearing these goggles. It's not just a green overlay on a camera. You've got these characters who are very much afraid in the dark. We have our ally moving around the outside, like these windows, nicely placed while they kind of infiltrate around the side. So you kind of got this predatorial empowerment, you're in charge kind of thing happening. Which is another paradox of the game, I think. The you're in charge, you're the kind of male power fantasy military thing. Except in a game where you're always following orders and always doing what you're told. It's a very interesting contradiction, I think.
It's him. Nikolai, are you alright? Can you walk?
Yes, I can still fight. Thank you for getting me out of here.
Big Bird, this is Bravo 6. We have the package. Meet us at LZ1. Over. Bravo 6, this is Big Bird. We're on our way. Now.
Let's go.
The levels are still quite open at this point. Like, there's very clearly a pathway meant to go, but you know, you can often enter houses from multiple angles or have an entire field, which for later games are much more narrow, which the people who enjoyed this game but don't enjoy the later games clearly have an issue with. So at the moment it's still very much that kind of, I guess, cinematic battlefield simulator, more than the very linear cinematic thing that the later games do more and more. But I guess I always played them for the cinematic linearness of them, so that's never really bothered me. So he's telling me how the Americans are going to invade that country that the president was killed from in the last video. And now we have that big kind of boom. So we're finally playing an American, almost an hour into the game. Got some guitars playing because America.
Have a possible fix on Al-Assad in a building at the west end of this town. We're gonna secure the perimeter and grab Al-Assad. Hurrah! Lock and load.
It's really quite jarring how different the tone changes from like British elite kind of running around silencers in the night to a fleet of helicopters who I'm sure would never actually approach a battlefield like this. You know, Ruha kind of sergeant yelling at you, as we like fly into the Middle East and shoot everyone. And I think this is the image of modern warfare most people would probably have over those earlier levels. And it's a very weird change in tone, and it all kind of comes together. You find out this kind of uprising is all just a kind of proxy to some kind of Russia thing happening with nuclear warheads. So it all converges eventually. So this is all quite a clear kind of, not a metaphor, but an analogy, I guess, for the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq. Like, these games come out after those started and very much at the height of those. So it's a fictional country, but it's very clearly playing off images of that warfare. I like the little things where they just looked at each other and nodded. It's kind of moment-to-moment little animations are just nice.
Jackson, take point.
Alright, and in case it wasn't clear, I'm a different character now. Now I'm Jackson. I'm not Soap, the British SAS soldier. I have a much bigger, louder gun. Private Jackson, I think? I don't know.
Jackson, throw a flashbang.
So left bumper is flashbang, right bumper is grenade. You just kind of have all these buttons that will just do something very quickly at any one moment. You just have this nice fast-pacedness to it. It's just really fluid kind of game. And I'm not sure how clear it is in the video, but you know, that whole kind of persistent 60 frames per second thing, which looks very weird after playing a game that isn't 60 frames per second. But gives it a flow again. So we're looking for Al-Assad, who's the guy who shot me in the face earlier.
Al-Assad is broadcasting half a click east of here at a TV station. We're gonna move out on foot and take down the package there.
Where the hell are we? I never come this way. Right, so we're back at the start now. We're trying to move around and find him. So even in this part, there's quite a few paths you can take. You know, it's still kind of relatively open, especially compared to later games. And again, you have multiple people doing things. If too many of your allies die, more allies will just kind of run on set from stage left. Enemies will keep running on from stage right until you pass a certain line. So it's not really concerned about particular objectives so much as it's concerned with just a sense of being in the middle of it, and you'll be in the middle of it until you're through it. Like a ghost train or something at a theme park ride. That's really all it is. It's a theme park ride. Oh dear. Didn't see him. Are we going that way? I think I'm disorientated. Everybody's shooting in a different direction. Seems like a poor strategy. So I couldn't shoot through those barrels, which is nice. You got those kind of different textures of the world based on where you can and can't shoot. So you just feel like in these Battlefield levels that there's so much going on, so many different entities, I guess, or like a better word, all kind of figuring out what they're meant to do, who they're meant to shoot at. Sometimes they'll see you and turn and fire you, but you don't. It's not always all of them versus just you. It's just very nice. You know, there's always stuff happening in the background, jets flying overhead. And of course, it's all scripted to happen when you're in the best place to see it happen. So remember, I'm going to keep mentioning it, the iron sight lock-on auto-aim, which is so central to how the game plays. Oh dear. Like in the moment to moment. It's worth remembering it's still happening. Which probably makes this game feel a lot different on console than it does on PC. I imagine that doesn't happen on PC, but maybe I'm wrong. Something I've also always enjoyed about first-person shooters, ever since I played Doom as a kid, the kind of haphazard taking cover as opposed to a formalized cover system, which is also fun in third-person games, but oh dear. I like the idea of having to actually just kind of understand the environment, to actually stand between the ledges or, you know, make those moment-to-moment decisions. Oh, didn't see that one. That's the first time I've seen that ability. So you can throw grenades back. That's something you could do in the old Call of Duties as well. Which is another nice, like, so there's always little things, despite the repetitiveness of a game. These kind of always moment-to-moment decisions you can make. Are you going to throw the grenade back? Are you going to run away from it? Risk losing cover? Are you going to shoot through the wall or aim for someone else? There's these kind of... just this nice moment-to-momentness of it that, to me, for me at least, makes it not repetitive, really.
Target building in sight.
Oh, you're a good guy. Sorry. Right, so Al-Assad is apparently broadcasting from this TV station.
Good. Get in position to breach.
So you have a combination of like characters that you kind of stick with. I think Lieutenant Vasquez is someone we see over and over. I think he's the guy talking most of the time. But then you just have kind of random name generators, I think, for the other characters who will appear or disappear. In this building you'll see what I kind of enjoy in a lot of shooters is kind of a satisfaction of environmental destruction. So in a lot of games it's kind of nice after you do something to be able to look at it and go, I did that. You know, like a castle in Minecraft or whatever, that kind of permanence of an action. And I think you got a weird kind of destructive sense of that in a lot of shooters. Especially, I think Max Payne 3 does it very well. You see it in here for these monitors of having a battle in a kind of pristine environment, and then afterwards just looking around and seeing bullet holes, smashed bottles, bodies, I guess, and just kind of this like slightly morbid, I guess, sense of, oh, I just ran onto a grenade, I think. Satisfaction of, I did that, that's, you know, my performance inscribed onto the environment. This part's quite hard, there's enemies everywhere. So you end up just kind of shooting everywhere and hoping you hit some of them. Oh no. So you often can't see what you're doing, you're just kind of firing blindly. But I like that. I like that it's not just shooting that person and that person and that person all the time. And you always have so many bullets, and you always have a machine gun that it's kind of okay. You just kind of feel like part of the chaos. Someone's still shooting at me. Nope.
Roof clear. Move up. Al-Assad should be on the second floor.
So then you just kind of have this destruction everywhere. Like, you rarely have a chance to kind of appreciate it in this game like you would some other games that give you some downtime. There's no downtime here. But still, it's kind of nice just watching the world be inscribed with your performances, even if that's just a super violent performance. Now we move through a room with some windows just to remind us where we're fighting in generic Middle Eastern country A. I guess I just said there's no downtime, but that was probably a lie because you have these moments. We just meet another squad and group up and talk about things. The battles are still happening out and around you. And again, that's another very deliberate framing thing. You know, you come out of this door, you're facing this direction, and the jets come right at you and over your head. Again, very clearly thought about where they put those. Again, lots of games do it, but you see it again and again in this game.
I think he's in there. I hear him.
Coming together of environmental design with making sure a spectacle is in the right place. And shock horror, Al-Assad isn't here.
He's not here. It's on a loop. Broadcast is recording. Yeah. Score 1 for military intelligence.
Griggs, turn that off.
Roger that. I got something better anyway.
Man, this is Red Dot. TV station secure. No sign of Al-Assad. Over.
Yeah. Hoorah.
Roger that, command. Out. Marines, rally up. We got a new assignment. Get your gear and get ready to move out. Let's go.
So that's our introduction to the American forces, and they're very kind of the gung-ho, jingoistic American stuff, as opposed to the much more restrained kind of SAS stuff.
Al-Assad is making his last stand. Fighting has intensified in the capital city. Anti-aircraft fire and burning buildings light the night.
Roger on location. Repeating, map grid 527619er. Over.
Bravo 6 copies. Over.
Bravo 6, we have an...
So we'll pick up this mission in the next episode, where we have to go and rescue a tank.
Unit is shotgun. Over.
So at this point still it is very much just military mission A, followed by military mission B. But we're slowly starting to see the connection of characters and concerns with the SAS informer in Russia, talking about how this invasion being a bad idea. But we'll see all that come together later. For now, it's still just, I guess, generic missions.